All right, let's get into it. We've all had that heart-stopping moment, right? A burst pipe, the dishwasher overflowing, or water creeping in from a big storm. But what really happens in the hours and days after the water shows up? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the world of professional water restoration and uncover all the hidden damage you can't see.
So let me start by asking you a question. When you think about damage to your home, what's the first thing that pops into your head? A fire? Maybe a break-in? Well, what if I told you the #1 culprit is something way more common and a whole lot sneakier?
Here's a little hint for you. It's not the big dramatic stuff we always see in the movies. The most common threat to our homes? Well, it doesn't come with a loud alarm or a big bang.
Yep, you guessed it. It's water. It can start as just a tiny little drip and then boom, it spirals into a total catastrophe, silently wrecking the very structure of your house. It's that mix of speed and stealth that makes water so uniquely dangerous.
And that leads us right into our first section, how this silent invader actually gets into our homes. And trust me, it's often from the places you'd least expect. You'd probably think the biggest disasters come from some massive, obvious flood. But honestly, it's rarely that dramatic. More often than not, the bad guys are our everyday appliances. That washing machine hose that finally just gives out, a teeny tiny pinhole leak in a pipe you can't even see under your foundation, or an old water heater tank that finally rusts through. These are the sneakiest ways water gets in.
And here's the thing. The damage doesn't happen in a bubble. Your local environment, where you live, plays a massive part. So take a place like Texas. The high humidity means things never really get a chance to dry out on their own. The clay soil there literally swells and shrinks, putting constant stress on your home's foundation and pipes. And then you get those crazy thunderstorms. It's like pouring gasoline on an already raging fire.
Now, this number right here, this is so important. 24 to 48 hours. That's it. That is the entire window you have before a simple water problem starts to morph into a much more serious, much more hazardous mold contamination. The clock literally starts ticking the second the water hits.
So, let's break down what exactly happens inside that tiny, critical window. The speed at which everything falls apart is, well, it's genuinely shocking.
Just look at this timeline. It shows the whole domino effects perfectly. In just a few minutes, water is already spreading out, wicking its way up your drywall like a sponge. Give it a few hours, and that same drywall starts to swell and bubble, your beautiful hardwood floors begin to cup and buckle, and all that insulation in your walls becomes a soggy, useless mess. And after a couple of days, that's when you start to see visible mold and have to worry about real structural problems.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's fast, it's sneaky, and it's destructive. So now, let's switch gears and talk about the solution. How do professionals step into this total chaos and bring everything back to normal? Well, there's a real science to it.
And that science is governed by this organization you see here, the IICRC. This isn't about a guy showing up with a few fans and a mop. No. Professionals who are IICRC certified are following a super strict, globally recognized playbook for how to do this right. It's your guarantee the job is done correctly and safely.
And that whole process is incredibly methodical. First, they find all the water you can't see using things like thermal cameras. Then they bring in massive pumps to get all the standing water out. Next, they set up a whole engineered drying system. This is not just placing fans randomly. And here's the key, they track the progress with hard data every single day until everything meets a scientific dry standard.
And a huge part of their strategy is knowing exactly what kind of water they're dealing with. I mean, a leak from a clean water pipe is a totally different ballgame than a sewer backup. The category of the water changes the entire game plan, from the protective gear they have to wear to what materials are just too contaminated and have to be torn out and thrown away.
All right, now let's dig a little deeper into the drying phase, because this is where the really cool science and technology comes out to play. It is so much more complicated than just making things feel dry to the touch.
Check out this toolkit. This is not the kind of gear you can just go rent at the hardware store. Thermal cameras let them literally see cold, wet spots hidden behind your walls. Penetrating meters can measure the moisture deep inside the wood and drywall, and those giant dehumidifiers and air movers, they are powerful enough to literally change the atmosphere inside a room.
So how does all this stuff work together? Well, the goal is basically to create a targeted indoor drought. They set up all the equipment to make the air so incredibly dry, so thirsty, that the wet building materials have no choice but to release all that trapped moisture into the air. And from there, the dehumidifiers just grab it and pull it away. That's the science of drying in a nutshell.
And this table right here really shows that done isn't just a feeling.
It's a number. It's hard data. Professionals are working to hit these very specific, measurable moisture levels for every single material. Wood needs to get below 15%, drywall has to be under 1%. Until their meters hit these numbers and it's all documented, that equipment isn't going anywhere.
Which brings us to our last and, maybe the most important section of all. What happens after all the trucks and equipment are gone? Well, the long-term consequences really come down to one thing: how well the job was documented.
And this is where the real-world legal reality kicks in. In many places, like you see here with Texas, you are required by law to tell a potential buyer about any past water damage when you sell your home. If that damage wasn't handled properly and you don't have the paperwork to prove it, it can directly impact your property's value for years to come.
And that is exactly why the final paperwork you get from the restoration company is so much more than just a receipt. It's basically a legal shield for your investment. That certificate of completion with all the final moisture readings attached is your hard proof to a future buyer that the problem was completely and professionally solved.
Which kind of leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Just because you can't see the water anymore, does that really mean the problem is over? As we've just seen, the real damage and the real solution is all about what's hidden behind the walls and the science it takes to prove that it's truly completely dry.